So today we're going to talk about leadership. Is it based on how we were born to be, or is it something that we can learn? So let's discuss this.
Building spirituality, family, health, and business. This is The Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.
All right. Hey, giant builders. I am so glad you're here. Hey, I have a question for you. Have you liked us on social media yet? I mean, you really need to because it really helps us reach more people. So those links are right below. So make sure to follow us. So today's guest is Amber Mays. Hi, Amber. How are you?
I'm doing great, Lois. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a leadership coach. I work with leaders in marginalized identity groups. So women, BIPOC folks, LGBTQ plus folks, people living with disabilities, basically leaders who are navigating systems where there's bias at play. I was a consultant for 25 years doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And at some point, I got pretty burnt out from flying everywhere, doing workshops all over the world. And so I pivoted to do one-on-one coaching. And a part of why I did it is because I kept seeing these brilliant leaders who were struggling to get ahead, struggling to be seen and valued. And so I decided I really wanted to work directly with these leaders to help them thrive. So that's what I do now.
I know, wouldn't it be great if we just had a world that would just see people for their talents?
Mm.
Wouldn't
It
that
would
be
be
just wonderful?
fantastic. That is my dream.
Yeah, I know. Where we are.
It
So,
is.
so, um, so what are some more barriers that your clients face? I mean, there's the obvious ones that hit my head, but are there some like secret barriers that we may not really realize?
That's a great question. I think the issue, the more obvious ones, I think we all think about, right? So there's, bias that's overt bias that shows up, not being seen for promotions, not being overlooked for opportunities, that sort of thing. The
Yeah.
typical implicit biases like affinity bias and confirmation bias, the things that, if you have a brain, you have bias, right? I think most of us are familiar with those. Um, I think the ones that people don't necessarily see are the microaggressions, the little things that are adding up every day that have a cumulative impact, kind of verbal and nonverbal, and situational messages that tell folks they're not enough or they need to change who they are, to succeed, to get whatever opportunity is they're seeking. It's kind of like the water that folks are swimming in day to day. That is it's an extra layer of burden to navigate. Leadership is already a really difficult job as it is. But the additional navigation of those microaggressions is a lot of what I end up working with leaders on.
Yeah. And like you said, disability is one of them. When I was at college, the floor that I lived on was the level of the disability students.
Mhm.
And it just really opened my eyes to all the things they really could do. I mean,
Mhm.
it was amazing all the things that they could just do, and it's like I think about people who would just like give up and not like, oh, I don't want to try for that. That's just I wasn't born that way or anything like that. And even one time they had a disability awareness day. And so I got nominated somehow. And so I spent the day in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
And it is really eye-opening, not only to the fact of what you have to figure out to get around campus in a wheelchair, but how you accommodate the way people are looking at you in a wheelchair. And
Yeah.
so there's so many things that we don't think about or even are obviously not faced or cannot even think about facing that people who are, quote, different, which I don't even like that word. Is there a different word to use?
Mhm. Well, it's interesting as you're talking because I think, you'd have to ask individuals how they identify. Some people do identify as living with a disability. Some people don't look like that term at all. For me, what's important is that we look at the system as being the issue, that the system's not set up for the varied ways we are able, right? So it's less about pathologizing the individual as being someone who can't do or has to adapt or needs an accommodation, and more about what are we doing in our systems to make it a place where people are there's accessibility for people across a wide continuum of ability. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah. So how do clients find you?
That's a great question. I was doing some research the other day to figure that out. I don't know. I think you probably interview a lot of coaches and consultants and people, who are great at what they do, but aren't necessarily marketers. So this is a learning curve of mine. Most people find me through word of mouth. I got a lot of, I would say for 25 plus years, I've gotten most of my clients through referrals.
Mhm.
Um, these days, some folks are, whoever did my website is doing a great job with search engine optimization. So I am getting quite a few calls just from folks who are Googling, executive leadership coach with DEI background. And then others are finding me through social media and through speaking events, podcasts like this.
Mhm.
So a lot of different ways. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so are there some common talents that people have that you work with? I mean, leadership is a big word.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say the leaders that I work with tend to be folks who are really strong in emotional intelligence, are able to effectively work with people interpersonally, to be able to motivate folks on their teams, and to be able to navigate group dynamics. A lot of the things that we're not taught when we are in our jobs early on with technical expertise, right? A lot of folks are just promoted into leadership without given any of the skills. And so the leaders that I work with often have these natural abilities to be able to work with people and are able to shine in that way. And I work with folks often on expanding those skills and on being able to really understand how to hold their position as leaders in a way that partners with the folks around them versus, has some sort of micromanagement or, holds tight to control. I think that's an instinct often early in our careers, feeling like we have to be the ones who know everything and, have our hands in everything. So a lot of what I work with folks on is, kind of returning authority to their team members and really, I don't even use the word empowered. It's just, giving authority, having people really feel like they own what they're doing, and allowing them to do so.
So are you also giving them leadership training, if you will?
It varies. There are sometimes when what I'm doing is a lot of mindset work. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. And it's really just, doing a lot of typical coaching of asking really good questions and making observations and giving some feedback on, some ways that I'm hearing them show up. And then sometimes it's really a combination of the coaching and some leadership skills, specific skills that folks need that they were never taught. So I have varied packages, and some of them include a bit of training.
Okay, expand on the mindset for me a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we think about leadership, we think about the external pieces, the behaviors, the things that you're seeing in leaders that are effective. And a lot of coaching is about that. And what I find is that 9 times out of 10, the work that I'm doing with leaders is the internal work. It's the beliefs, the things that tell us, I can or can't do something. This is possible. This is impossible. I should be a leader that looks like this, that has to be decisive and have all the answers. As a woman, I might believe that to be an effective leader, I have to be nurturing, or I might be told that I have to act more like a man, right? All of these insidious beliefs that are behind our behaviors that are relatively unconscious most of the time. So it might be that. It might also be the inner critic voice, which we all know and have, right? There's been a lot of folks talking about that lately. I think of it as like the gang of voices, that are kind of out to get us, telling us, "Who are you to do this? Just wait until they find out you don't know what you're talking about." That imposter syndrome stuff. So it's a lot of work on helping folks recognize when those beliefs and voices are coming up and developing a different relationship with them so that they're able to understand that these voices are there to keep them safe, right? That's what's happening is our brains are mostly about keeping us alive and safe. So these messages come from that place. So respecting that and then finding a way of being in the driver's seat instead of them being in the driver's seat. So taking the reins and, being like, listen, I'm the adult here. I got this, we got this. Thanks so much for trying to keep us safe. So a lot of the work is around that. Um, Also included in the mindset piece is about how people define success. I work with leaders a lot on what does success look like for you? Because if you don't check it, often success looks like what your parents told you success looked like, or what society says, or what your organization says is the next ladder, the next rung on the ladder that you should take. So there's a lot of kind of unwinding that programming and helping people really understand, like, what does that mean for me? When will I be fulfilled? When will I be having the leadership impact I want and kind of really living my purpose? So that's a lot of what goes into the mindset work.
So what does a first meeting look like with you?
I love that question. So I actually do a little bit before even the first meeting. So I'll do a discovery call with folks to see if it's the right fit. But I send out a kind of a visioning questionnaire for folks to spend some time really reflecting on what it is they want out of coaching, what their goals are, what they want to be different at the end of 3 to 6 months. And then so the first call is a 90-minute call, and it's really digging deep into what that vision is for them and getting to know each other, right? Understanding what's important to them, what their values are, how we're going to work together, setting the course for working together.
That sounds pretty in depth. That'd be
Yeah.
hard for me. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up yet.
I think you're in good company there, Lois.
Oh, yeah. All of these, uh, all of us Peter Pans.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I love that you're saying that too, because I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert she was doing a talk and she was talking about how for a long time she was telling people they needed purpose, right? They needed to find that one purpose, like why are they here? And I think she got a letter from someone that was saying, I'm just sitting here and I'm just despondent because I don't have a purpose, and I can't find my purpose and I don't know what it is and it's depressing me. And she shifted and she said, some of us have lots of different things, right? Like we're more like hummingbirds. We're kind of moving from thing to thing. And that's a wonderful way to be. It's just a different way to be. So, sometimes that conversation is really about, not just about one purpose, but, what are the ways of being in the world that fulfill you? And so how do we build a path for you that meets you where you are?
Oh, I love that as far as being in the world as you and
Mhm.
what talents can you bring to that space?
Yes.
Really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's true for a lot of us leaders who have been raised in systems that weren't necessarily built for us. So, we're we're kind of often feeling like we have to adapt and be something we're not. So a lot of the work I end up doing with leaders is who are you authentically, and what does that look like in your leadership style? How do we carve out a path in a way for you to be really aligned with that?
And there's so many books out about leadership now. It just makes me sometimes wonder, like, so what's the definition of a leader these days? I don't, you have like the one side that's kind of like the old look where there's kind of like the tough guy who's there, and then you have this guy who's monitoring everybody, and it's just like, I don't even really know what defines a leader these days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just actually talking about this on a social media post that for so long, the definition of leadership was really kind of command and control. And it was, that idea again that you have all the answers and you're telling people and you're pulling the strings and everybody has to obey you. And, it turns out the more leadership research that you dig into, let's just say you define leadership also as like you have follow if people want to follow you. It's not just you, in a vacuum barking out orders, but people really feel like they are a part of something, that they are a part of some sort of bigger purpose, that they feel like they want to show up and they want to do the work and they feel inspired to do so. That kind of leadership requires a different mindset. It requires mutual respect. It requires seeing your everyone and the people that you're working with, stakeholders, peers, staff members, team members, as equals. There may be positional hierarchy, but it doesn't mean that I'm better than you. It means that, we've got some structure in place to be able to get our work done. And so for me, it's really more about collaboration and about motivating change and motivating folks to move towards a purpose together, a mission together, which requires a very different skill set than what you'll find in a lot of the older texts that are out there.
Yeah, but I think too that I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that if you're a true leader these days, you know that you can't know everything.
Absolutely.
You have to have a team to keep you, like I followed Neil Patel and I could see in him how he relies on his team to gather the information. He can't know everything,
Mhm.
but his corporation really leads.
Yes, yes. And that is what I find is that you are an effective leader when your organization can operate without you there in every, corner of it, right? Because you can't know everything. I mean, that's just a lie. That's just, that's an old idea. And maybe it was more possible when we weren't global, when we, didn't have such a large community that we're dealing with. There's just so much information and so much to know. How could we possibly know everything? So it takes some dropping some of the hubris that, I can do it all, to be able to see how wonderful it is too when you're able to tap into the brilliance of all of the team members, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever been on a team where everybody's just doing their absolute best and they're excited and they're engaged. It's the best feeling, it's so much better than being like the one that's fixing it all and doing it all. That actually usually ends up in burnout anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that was a lot of in-depth information then that we kind of went down this road.
good.
Any closing thoughts?
Well, the closing thought that I will share is that what's different for leaders who are navigating bias, who do have marginalized identities, is that we need to build a almost like a buffer system for ourselves, right? Because there's so much that's coming at us that we've internalized and that we continue to internalize. So that includes building a really intentional support system, I think of it as like a reciprocal support system. It requires being really intentional in terms of our self-care practices, our mindset practices. How are we caring for ourselves and carving our own paths, right? Which is often the case. That's what we need to do to be able to be successful in the ways that we really want to. So I'm a big fan of folks doing all of the what I think of as building their own success system. And I think it's really more possible than ever, even though it feels like in some corners like we may be going backwards. You know, there's glimmers of hope out there. I see a lot of folks coming together for change and really wonderful, brilliant leaders on the horizon. So I am hopeful.
Yeah. I mean, I think about we're watching 1942 right now, and I think about all the changes that happened between then and just now. It's just like it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Our technology is growing so fast and moving so fast, and our we're training and teaching our upcoming generations to be more acceptable. I feel that way anyway, to be more acceptable to other people and to eliminate this block and this barrier.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you watch the news, you may
Oh, yeah,
feel
I don't watch the
otherwise,
news.
right?
Oh yeah,
I
I don't
have a
watch the
limit.
news, so
It's kind of like candy
that's
or
the wall
something
I
like
built.
that. Yeah. Yeah, I watch just enough to feel like I know, what's going on so that I can be a part of the solution and not the problem. And I think it's really important to be looking at all of the ways that there are really wonderful things happening. And, they're really open-minded folks who are doing the work to be more and more accepting and our communities are growing and building and just vibrant in so many corners. So it's a both and, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amber, thank you so much for all your insight and your input and just the work that you're doing for people.
Thank you so much, Lois. Thank you
All right,
as well.
Giant Builders, we're going to have her contact information below, so make sure that you pass it on or use it, whichever works out best for you. And we will see you next week. Bye, Giant Builders.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.